Okay, this is like my fourth go around with this video. I want to tell you the story about my search for my birth father. And I want to try to give you at least an insight on, you know, what happened and stuff like that, the best of my knowledge, and stuff like that. And there's a lot of lessons learned, and one of the big lessons is, things happen in God's time, you know, and it has a pretty good outcome. So I'm really anxious to tell it. And it started when I was, say, about 8 years old. My mom and I were at the old post office in El Monte, South El Monte, and for some reason, I seen a copy of my birth certificate. She had to have it for school or something like that. And when I looked at it, being a kid, being curious, I looked to where it said, where your father should be, and it said in really bold letters, it said deceased. And I didn't know what deceased mean, but when you see that word, there's certain words that jump out at you, and that one just really jumped out at me. And I asked my mom, I go, "What's that mean?" And she told me, she goes, your dad is not alive anymore. And I didn't know what the word deceased meant at the time, but the first thought that come to my mind was, this is BS. And I knew what that word meant because my grandpa used to say it all the time. So anyway, so I periodically would ask questions, and it would really get on my mom's nerve, and it was, you could tell it bothered her every time I asked. And so I would ask, family members like my grandparents, and I asked my great uncle Jim, which was a character, and I really miss all of them, but all of them would tell me that he was a very handsome guy, and he was a very nice person, and that they hoped that I would find him someday. And that kind of stuck out. Well, my mom saying that he's deceased, but my grandparents say they hope I find him someday. And I keyed on to that at a young age, and I was like, this is really, something's not right, So as I get older, I periodically would ask the question, can you tell me some stuff about my dad? Can you tell me anything? And I would pretty much get shut down. And I think it was because my mom was just being protective for some reason, just because that's how moms are, And so anyway, I want to say, I went and I did stuff. I went into the military. I had one close call where I thought I probably should have died in that accident. And I remember during that accident, when everything was said and done, I was like really thankful I made it for. And the whole reason was that I couldn't live with the fact that something happened to me and not know who my dad is. And so I'm going to fast forward to about 2004. I was out of the academy for about a year because I gone on to work in law enforcement. And I made some really good friends during that time, and I have two best friends. One's named Ron, the other one's named Martin, and both of them are like my best friends. They're both great people, and I was over at my friend Martin's house one time, and it was around 2005. I want to say 2005, 2006, and he told me, he says, "Calvin," he goes, "something about you is you're searching for something." He goes, "I don't know what you're searching for, but I know you're searching for something." And that really just stuck with me. And it was like somebody's actually noticing, because from the time I was 8 years old, I don't think there wasn't a day that went by that I didn't search somehow for my dad, whether it was thinking about him, what he looked like, or asking family members and stuff like that, and it was like from the time I'd wake up in the morning to the time I went to bed, I thought about that, and but he was like the first person to really recognize that I was searching for something. But I didn't really tell them a whole lot of, I told them I didn't know who my birth father was, but I didn't tell them how in depth I was trying to search. Because in 2004, I bought a computer and a laptop, and I was burning up the internet. I mean, day in and day out, searching, and I spent, numerous hours searching, different websites and trying to find this Randy Young. And anyway, I go to about all the way up to like 2015. I find a Randy Young from El Monte, and it was on Facebook. 2015, 2016. And so I find this Randy Young, and I look at his Facebook, and I was like, that's him. That's got to be him, because we look kind of similar. And so I contacted my mom, and I downloaded a picture of him, and I sent it to my mom. I said, is this him? And she goes, that really looks like him. And she goes, I'm certain that's him. But I wanted verification. And verification is very important, So, so what I did is ask my mom some more questions, trying to get more details. And she told me that if I found the Melton family, that I would get some answers, because the Meltons were like best friends with this Randy Young. So I go and I start searching for the Melton family, and I found a profile for Randy Melton. So I sit there and I start looking at pictures and stuff like that, and I sent him a private message, and I got contacted. And remember this name too, because it's kind of significant in the story. Is his wife Denise contacted me, and I explained to her what I was doing. I was searching for my father, and his name is Randy Young, and he was from El Monte High School, and they were to be friends. And so after the conversation, we didn't really get a whole lot out of there was really no information. And so I was like, I felt like I hit a dead end. And I started looking through, different Meltons, looking through their Facebooks, because I was trying to find something like Randy. I was looking through his, because I was trying to see if there may be a picture of him with Randy Young together, so I could say, hey, that's the Randy Young. And it was Richard Melton, I believe, that I came across this photo right there. And the first thing I thought was, there's a picture of Randy Young. And the reason why this picture stuck out at me was because if you put them side by side, I think they look pretty similar. It could be just me though, but for some reason it stuck out at me. I looked almost like I was looking at myself, and I thought, well, that's got to be Randy Young. But at the time, I was kind of didn't want to get pushy with anybody or anything like that, because for somebody to call out of the blue and say I'm searching for somebody, I didn't want to irritate anybody or anything like that, so I didn't pursue it. But that picture always stuck out in my mind, and one of the things I didn't mention was that inspired me even more to keep looking was for there was a show, it was called Troy the Locator. And I would see that, and some of the shows would bring tears to my eyes, because the people were able to find lost loved ones, or loved ones they didn't know they had. And so the Troy in a show really inspired me. So they had a contest, they were looking at different scenarios, different people, and seeing if they could use them for a story. And so I put in for it, and I got an email back that said that I was like one of the finalists. And so I was like, this is cool. I can finally get some answers, because I know that that Troy is very thorough, and he's not gonna put somebody on the TV unless he knows for a fact. And I was like, this is a win-win. I'll get some actual help. Well, I emailed them to give them a little more in depth about my story, and and my at the time she was my fiance. She says, Calvin, she said, why are you doing that? And I said, because I want to find my birth father. And I said, this is very important to me. And she says, you know what? She goes, I don't want those people in my house. And when she told me that, it pretty much floored me. Uh, you know, I just couldn't, it just boggled my mind, really. And she told me, she goes, I really don't want those people in my house. She goes, this is the stupidest thing. And I mean, I felt like I got gut punched. And at that point, I didn't know what to do, because I didn't want to, I didn't want to ruin things with her at the time. And, it really bothered me. And that's the thing, too, is if you have a loved one that's searching for somebody, you need to be supportive, because that's something that can really, that really, it's very important to people, when you really think about it. And she really wasn't that supportive in that. And and so on and so forth. So anyway, I want to say it was 2016. Yeah, 2016. I want to say sometime, it was like the summertime, I think. I talked to my friend Lori, and I said, I don't know what else to do. And Lori recommended, if your mom is almost certain it's him, then maybe you should write a letter. So Lori helped me write this letter, and it was a very beautiful letter. And I told him that I thought he was my father. And my mom told me that she was certain that he was my father, and so on and so forth. And I told him a little bit about me and my background. And and the one thing that people, I think, worry about when they get a call like that is, does this person want money or something like that? So I made it very clear that I'm not looking for any money or anything like that. And I just want to know who my father is. I want to see a picture of him. I want to confirm it, and this and that. And so anyway, I leave all my contact information. And about a week later, this Randy Young contacts me, and we talk. And he was a super nice guy. And we talk, and he pretty much says, Calvin, he goes, I don't think I'm your father. I'm younger by about a year and a half of your mom, from what you tell me. And he goes, there's just no way. He goes, I don't even really remember your mom. And I remember that was like, felt like another roadblock. That's the whole thing through all this, is there was seemed like there was just a ton of roadblocks and dead ends and stuff like that, and it gets frustrating. So he goes, but I'll get back to you, and I'm going to talk to some high school friends and stuff like that, and see if jar my memory and stuff. He goes, I don't know what else to do. And so I said, okay. And I said, well, thank you for calling. And anyway, so I did the ancestry thing. I was like, well, this will do it, because if somebody in his family has done the ancestry DNA, then I'll have a confirmation that way. So I went ahead and did my ancestry DNA, and couldn't wait to get it. I got it. Took, like, I think about a week and a half. I did it that day. I did the swab and stuff like that, and put it in the little container, and put it in the envelope, and I shipped it off, I think, the same day. I was so wanting to get this done. And it took about 6 weeks, and I looked on. I got an email, said that my DNA was pretty much up and ready to go. So I go on there and I look, and I see all this stuff, and it looks like like I'm looking at China. I couldn't figure anything out, and so I figured out to look at people's profiles and look at their family names and stuff like that, and I couldn't find a single Young anywhere. And so I started messaging people, and there was just nothing. And what's funny is I seen a couple Meltons, and I was like, Melton. I said, those are supposed to be my dad's friends, and I was like, that's odd. And so, anyway, uh, fast forward to about, I want to say it was in 2017. I want to say it was around maybe June of 2017. Uh, a lady popped up on there as like a first cousin hit, which is like, that's like the closest you can get other than a sister or your actual birth parent. And so I shoot this person a message and I go, hey, do you by chance have any Randy Youngs from El Monte in your family tree? And it took about, I think, 2 weeks to get the message, because not everybody logs on there every single day. And I think it was about 2 weeks. There was a lapse of time, and finally I got this message back, and she goes, no, I don't have any Randy Youngs from El Monte, but it sure is really funny you mentioned El Monte, because I used to go there every year as a child. And I'm from I want to say Illinois, and 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 I also remember looking when I looked at Randy Melton's uh, Facebook. I said he was originally from Illinois, and that just keyed in. I keyed into that, and I said, "Are you by chance related to any Meltons?" And she sent me a message back. She goes, "You know what, Calvin? I am related to some Meltons." And she says, she sent me another email right after that. She goes, "You know what? Uh, let me contact my cousin, and I will get back to you as soon as I contact her." So I want to say about an hour goes by, and it was a long hour, you know, and 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 it was it just seemed like forever, and so I get this message back. She goes, "Calvin, I have good news." And she goes, I think we found your dad. She goes, here's here's a phone number. This is your Aunt Robin. And she goes, we are certain that you're related because you look just like one of my cousins. And I'm like, what? And so I take this number and I call Aunt Robin. And we talk, and she's just like almost in tears. She's just so excited. And she goes, I'm almost certain you're my brother Richard's son. And she goes, I'm almost certain of it, and so, and I was like, wow. And then, and then they looked at my Facebook and they put pictures of Richard and I together, and they said, and I looked at them, and it was like almost looking at two of the same people almost, and so I contact my mom, and my mom says, well, I dated Randy, and then after Randy and I broke up, wasn't too long after that I dated Richard. And I was like, you gotta be kidding me. That's not what I want to hear from my mom. So anyway, so I had people contacted me. I had my cousin Chrissy contacted me, my sister Tracy, and a bunch. I started getting friend requests left and right, and I talked to Richard, and we decided to do a three-way DNA test. Believe it or not, if that doesn't sound hilarious, but it's what it is. It is what it is. So anyway, so we did a three-way DNA test, and I decided to go up there to visit them. They live up in Northern Oregon, and I'm from Southern Oregon too, so that's what's kind of cool. And Richard lives in Spokane. And what's funny about this is the April prior to that, I was actually dating a girl in Spokane, Washington, and I remember going up to visit her, and I went up to visit her, and my GPS took me to the middle of Spokane, and I remember getting lost there, and I was like right in the middle of downtown Spokane with my big old truck, and I called her and I said, hey, you got to get me the hell out of here. I said, I don't know where I'm at, and I'm lost. And anyway, we're going to fast forward. I go up to meet them up there, at their their home, and got to meet some of my cousins, my cousin Chrissy, my sister Tracy. Uh, and I met Richard, and I met Randy, and I met Denise, and so on and so forth. And anyway, so we did the DNA test prior to that, and anyway, while I was visiting there, they did the results, and Richard came back as being my father. And do you remember the name Denise, the lady I talked to? Uh, prior to this, when I was trying to contact Randy, well, she's my aunt, which is kind of funny, and because just the way things work, and so so anyway, we're gonna fast forward a little bit, and I have a ton of cousins, and I have 4 other sisters, so I have a total of 4 sisters from my dad Richard. And so I went up just this last month, April, which is almost a year to the date that I was there in Spokane before, and I got to go meet my sisters and all that stuff. But what was funny is when I went to go see my dad, where he lived and where I was when I got lost, I was only 2 blocks away from him, which I thought was just really, really odd. And to think that I was so close, and that's what makes me think that, there's things that are drawing us. I think, God's trying to draw us to the answers we want, but it's up to us to find them. And that's the one thing I'd recommend to people that, if you don't know who your parents are, I would encourage people to try to find out, to look, and they might not always have a good outcome like mine did, because my dad and my all my siblings, I mean, and my cousins, they're all very loving, good people, and I couldn't have there was like the best outcome that possible, and but it's not always going to turn out like that. But the thing is that, could you live with the fact of not knowing, and I used to think about that all the time, and that's where I said earlier, I didn't want to leave this earth and not know at least what my dad looked like. And so it was really, really just a good outcome, and I'm leaving a lot of stuff out, and I would actually like to write a book someday about it, or something like that, because there's a lot of little details, and I'd like to have somebody help me just go over all the details, because there's a lot of stuff, that it just seemed like I was so close, but so close to them, and it was like it was just meant to be. My she's my ex-fiance now, but there was a time back in 2015 we took a drive up to Montana from Northern California at the time, and I remember driving up through the panhandle of Idaho, and I just had this feeling, it was like a magnetic feeling. It was like I didn't want to leave that place. It was an unnerving feeling, and I was like, I don't want to leave, and she didn't understand why or anything, and I didn't either, and this girl that I dated in Spokane, we thought maybe it was because of her or something like that, and come to find out, no, it was, I think that it had something to do with being that close to my family and not even really realizing it, so anyway, so that's pretty much my story. I know I'm leaving a lot of stuff out and stuff, but this is the best I could do with this iPhone. I just bought a $2,000 camera, but I can't transfer the video over to my phone to post it, so this is just gonna have to do. So anyway, take care, and thank you for listening. Goodbye.